G'day and welcome to another episode of Kiwi Car Life. And the Mazda MX-5, long has it been the staple convertible rear-wheel drive sports car since its inception in the early 1990s. The NA MX-5, despite the lack of power, is still a cult classic with its pop-up headlights and timeless design and fantastically fun driving experience. The NB took the NA and, despite the perhaps slightly more controversial looks, it increased the number of gears in the transmission, the displacement, the power, which took the NA and turned it into a car for the 2000s. Then came the NC, the most controversial of all, because it was quite a radical departure of MX-5s from the past. It was significantly heavier, admittedly a lot more refined and comfortable, but definitely lost some of the magic of the early two. But the ND promised to bring everything back to its original roots. It lost a significant amount of weight over its predecessor and increased the power output, and as seen with this one here, we now have a retractable hardtop version which looks absolutely fantastic. The perfect balance of being able to have the top down but also have the practicality benefits of a hardtop roof. The original ND, when it came out in 2015, you could have with either a 1.5, which is basically a tuned version of the Mazda 2 engine, or the 2 litre, which again is basically a tuned version of the Mazda 3 engine, but of course turn around the other way. They're both 4-cylinder, they're both direct injection. The 1.5 made around 97 kilowatt and 150 newton meters, which is like Honda Jazz power, which I find quite funny, but it revved to over 7,500 RPM. So while not especially powerful, I've heard they are quite fun. And then of course you had the 2 litre. Didn't rev quite as high, only about 7,000 RPM and made right around 120 kilowatt. However, this, because it is the newer one, has kind of got elements of both engines, where it's the 2 litre, but they improved it further and got it to rev right up to 7,500 RPM, as seen by the slightly different gauge cluster. That's how you can tell them apart. And it now makes 181 horsepower, or 135 kilowatt, and 205 newton meters of torque, which are very healthy numbers for a modern naturally aspirated 2 litre engine. Not quite on the level of what Honda was pushing out back in the early 2000s with the K20, but still a healthy amount of power to push this 1,070 kilo car along. However, the owner decided that he wanted a little bit more, and so put an exhaust on it and a 98 octane tune, which now pushes it right up to 200 horsepower or 147 kilowatt. And that is exactly what the DC5 Integra Type R made, and they, as I just reviewed recently, are more than fast enough. So given this weighs even less and is rear-wheel drive with very short gears, I imagine it'll push it along just fine. And now the interior. Compared with this car's chief rival, the Subaru BRZ or Toyota 86, that's where this has a significant advantage. You can tell that the BRZ was built to a price. It does have some quite cool looking gauges and a decent steering wheel, but the rest of the interior is really rather cheap, if I'm honest. And certainly the one that I had and the one that I reviewed recently, even like a 20-year-old Honda Integra had a better interior. But Mazda, especially in recent times, as they've tried to sort of go a little bit more upmarket, especially with the release of their new 6-cylinder SUVs, you can tell they put a lot of effort into making this interior feel like a reasonably luxurious experience. The first thing I noticed when I got in was how plush the seats are. I was expecting really rock hard seats, but they're actually quite soft. The quality of all of the Napa leather on the steering wheel and seats and everything is really great. The infotainment system that they put in pretty much every Mazda is flawless. It has all the features you could ever need, and I like that they have stuck with the BMW iDrive style physical control knob down here, which means that you don't have to take your eyes too far off the road and operate the touchscreen. You can do it all just by feel. And then the gauges, just enough modernity with a screen off to the side that can show lots of useful information, and it's all a nice like color display, but then with backlit crisp LED physical gauges with a gear indicator and a central mounted tachometer, exactly as gauges should be. Features are reasonably good. It's got auto lights and wipers, cruise control, automatic climate control, a couple USB ports and an aux input, even got heated seats in here, which is nice if you have the top down on a cold day. And then of course the transmission, absolutely fantastic. Honestly, I would put this right on par with like a Honda S2000, which has a flawless transmission experience. This is also very nice, super easy to find all the gears and just has a lovely notchy experience. But overall, the interior is basically faultless. Built well, got all the features you need, is reasonably spacious even for someone like myself who's over 6 feet tall or can fit in here comfortably. It's just great. Driving the ND MX-5. One of my main complaints with the NC was that the throttle, with it being quite an early electronic throttle, it just kind of ruined the whole experience, and it wasn't obvious what it was doing, and also it didn't immediately respond to your inputs. This, on the other hand, though, is a very well calibrated electronic throttle, and everything else about the NC still remains in this car. The ride quality, sublime, and even despite the exhaust that he has on this one, the car is not too loud, but when you get on the power, it makes a lovely noise. So from a daily driving perspective, the touch points in the car are lovely, the ride quality is excellent, but of course no one's really buying an MX-5 to just poodle around, even though, as I'm discovering now, it can do it really rather well. No, they're buying an MX-5 because it is one of the best driving back road experiences imaginable. Oh, that is a zingy little engine, but it's quite a smooth, almost European sound. Heel toe is perfect. The pedal box, while slightly offset, is placed very well. Engine actually makes almost a bit more power than I was expecting. This thing's pretty pokey, eh? Foot down, it's really getting on the move. Second gear is all you need. Every time you let off, you get a little bit of a thud from the exhaust, which is fantastic. And on these Pilot Sport 5 tires, man, this thing is nimble. You definitely got a lot of body roll. You can tell the suspension is very soft. Rear wheel drive balance is fantastic. You can just hang the back end out a little bit if you want to. And yeah, like I mentioned, this thing is actually surprisingly quick, eh? I was expecting kind of BRZ levels of torquelessness, but nah, this thing is pokey, man. It's really quick. And honestly, even though full throttle is fun, it's not the kind of car where you have to just be planting it all the time. Steering feel is not the best I've ever used, but it's certainly good enough, and you can tell what the car is doing. It's very predictable, very easy to place on the road, and the rear wheel drive balance is simply fantastic. Really, I don't have any way that I can knock it. The NC was a little bit of a letdown when it came to the overall MX-5 brand. It was a little bit too soft, and like I mentioned, the electronic throttle in my mind, because it was a sort of early calibration of it, just sort of ruined it a little bit. This, they took the NC, they made it lighter, they gave it more features, made it just as comfortable, but they gave it an even better engine, a perfectly calibrated throttle, and what you're left with is honestly just one of the most fantastic back road driving cars that you can possibly imagine. Brilliant car, would definitely thoroughly recommend. Thanks very much for watching, and if you want to see some other reviews that I've done, like for instance the NC MX-5, then click on the links popping up right about now, and I'll look forward to seeing you again next time.